Alrighty, let's get started. So thank you everyone for coming out to our first workshop of the quarter. This is super exciting. This is the first workshop of our workshop series. We have a bunch more coming this quarter. They're mostly on Tuesdays at the same time. You can find all of those on our Facebook page and everything. And so this one's going to focus on creating your personal website, focusing on HTML and CSS basics, and getting you up to speed on having nothing to having it hosted, and you can actually send it to your friends for them to check it out too. And we've partnered with Include for this, which is also very exciting. And so a little bit before we begin about HackDavis. So what is HackDavis? I don't know what this hacking is. Are we hacking into the mainframe? Not quite. HackDavis is UC Davis's annual hackathon, usually hosted in winter quarter. We have lots of people who attend every year, over 600 people online, might be even more. And we like to focus on coding for social good. So when you show up, you create a team, and then you create some sort of project focused on some aspect of social good. So you might focus on health, environment, education, some way to improve those areas. And there's no experience necessary. We're a super beginner-friendly hackathon, especially even for non-CS majors. We have plenty of resources to help get you up to speed and get something out there. And it's a great learning opportunity for everyone. Oops, there we go. And so just a little bit of stats from last year's HackDavis is that we had over 600 participants. We had 110 social good projects submitted, which is super awesome. So that's probably an average of 3 or 4 people per group. So a lot of people submitted, which is really awesome. That's what we love to see. And it was actually a 48% first time rate. So 48% of people who attended HackDavis last year, that was their first hackathon. So that's really great to see. And we have lots of different sponsors, 20 plus sponsors last year, over $63,000 raised to put on the entire event, because this is a big event, requires a lot of funding, and over $10,000 in prizes that you can win. Oh, did I forget to mention that? You can win prizes at HackDavis, which is super cool. You make a cool hack, the judges like it, you might win a prize. So more incentives to come and participate. And so this is just a little video of HackDavis from 2020. Let me share my audio and let's play it. So as you can see, that was just some highlights from last year. It's a ton of fun, super fun, lots of things to do, not just hacking, but also other things. But unfortunately this year it's gonna be virtual because of COVID-19 and everything that's happening. But that doesn't mean we still can't have fun. So it's gonna be January 16th to 17th, that's MLK weekend. So it's a great time to spend 24, 36 hours hacking and creating that project. And so applications are going to open mid-November. Keep an eye out for announcements about that, and check out hackdavis.io for more details. And now a little bit about Include.
Hi, so we're Include, and today we will be partnering with HackDavis for this HTML CSS workshop. And our organization partners with local nonprofits every quarter, and we help build them a website. So we hope that by partnering with these local organizations, we can help improve both your experience and resume, and also benefit our community. This quarter, we're partnering with Friends of Children with Special Needs. And some examples of past projects we've done have been with the Davis Night Market, Mani Clinic, and Grid Alternatives. You can find more about our past projects on the website below at includedavis.com. And just to say, you don't need any prior experience to join Include. We host workshops throughout the whole quarter, and we will help teach you any skills that you need in the future.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Kevin.
Woohoo.
And now let's get right into it. So we've got some goals for today's workshop. So we're going to be building our personal website. Our goals are for you to master HTML, familiar with CSS. We know how it works, but we're not getting too into it. And understand Git/GitHub workflow specifically for setting up your website on GitHub pages at the end. So it's kind of a full circle deal here, which is very exciting. And so let's start out with some basic HTML. So HTML just stands for Hypertext Markup Language. You don't really need to know that. That's not very interesting, but it's basically the language that all websites are written in. And so the markup part of the language tells the browser how to display it. So if you see the search button on Google, there's HTML behind that telling the browser where to put it, how big it should be, and all of that. And so elements in HTML are represented by what are called tags. So this is an example HTML file down below. First, you have the beginning and ending HTML tags, and then within that, you have two other sections, which is the head, which is where various scripts and metadata go, which we'll get more into later, as well as the body, which is like the actual meat of your website. And so we'll get more into that a little bit as well. And so let's go into these tags a little bit. So all HTML uses these tags to create elements to display on your screen. And most of these tags come with an opening tag and a closing tag. So as you can see with this chart here, the paragraph element, which is represented by just a P, is the opening tag, and then you would put your content inside of there. So if you wanted to write a paragraph, you would start with the P element, write your content, and then end it with that /P element, and then that would end your paragraph element. And then your browser would say, oh, there's a paragraph element here. And then it would render that as a paragraph. And so these are just a few examples of different tags, but you don't have to memorize them at all. And so this is the basic kind of format of an HTML document. So generally at the top, you're telling the browser, hey, this is an HTML document with that doc type HTML. And then within that, you have two HTML tags saying, hey, all of the stuff is going to be in here. And then within the head, that's where you can load your JavaScript, your external CSS files, which we'll get into in a bit. And then the body, of course, is where you're actually going to define all of your elements, like the paragraphs and headers and titles and all of that good stuff. And so let's go into that metadata. What is metadata? So metadata contains information about the website. And all of this metadata is stored in the head tag. And as you can see in the example, it has meta elements inside of it. So for example, there is the title element, which actually displays the title of the page. So when you go to google.com and you see Google at the top, they have a title tag saying Google, just like this. And so that's how you would actually name your website and put that title at the top. And then those other meta tags are just there for mostly the search engine. So when Google tries to rank different things based on your search results, like if you're trying to search for your personal website, it would search using some of those keywords. So the better keywords that you have improve your search results and help people to find your website. So it's very important. And so going into the body, this is just the content that appears on the web page. So these are each element that you see in your browser. And so in this example, you can see in the body, we have an H1 element. The H1 element is a header element, which means it's a big title. And then as you can see on the left-hand side, it says, welcome to the research lab. and that's the header in big text. So that's what we just made by putting that in the body. Simple, right? And so here's a slightly more complex example of some of the other tags that you can add to the body as well to start to flesh out your website a little bit more. So you can see we have a couple header elements with the research topics, and those are H2 elements, which means they're still headers, but they're a little bit smaller than the H1 header because the H1 header is the largest header. And then within each of those, we have LI elements, which are list elements. So as you can see, for the author and year published, those have bullet points next to them because they use the LI or list element. And then underneath those, we're using the paragraph element, which is just basically text on the page. And so each of these HTML elements can also have attributes. So as you can see in these elements, there's a new element here that's called A. And inside each of these, it has an href attribute. And that's where it goes when you click on it. So A elements are usually used for links. So in this example, for this research lab, when you click on research, when you click on the research text, it'll navigate to the research.html. So it'll load up that other HTML that we've also made. So that's kind of how you would navigate between pages on a website. So you can have buttons and people can click those buttons and go to different areas of your website. And so how do we make it look good? Because that was all great, but I want to make it look good. So we make HTML elements look good using CSS, cascading style sheets. But you don't really need to memorize cascading style sheets, just CSS. And so in CSS, we first define what we want to change, and then we tell the browser how we want to change it. Because each of the different attributes, or each of the different elements in HTML have default properties. So for example, you saw that the text was black. That's one of the default properties. So in this example, you can see that we're changing the color of this header to red. And so here's how we would actually use some basic CSS. So there's a couple ways to use it. There's inline. So in the first example, you can see we have our header, and we can define an attribute called style, and then we would include color red in there. And then that would tell that specific header to have red text. But if you define all of your CSS within just that one line, it's going to get pretty messy pretty fast. So generally, you want to define all of your CSS in an external file. So this is some file usually called style.css, and you can see that down below. And you would do that by defining the link within head. So that link just basically tells the web page, hey, load up this CSS and then apply it to all of the HTML that we have. And so how does CSS actually work? So it uses these things called selectors. And selectors help you select the HTML elements that you want to style. And there's a few different ways to do it. So you can select by type, and that's the type of element. So for example, P refers to paragraph. And so in the first example, we're setting the color of all paragraphs to red. So every paragraph that we have on our page is going to be red. And we can also reference by ID. So if we give an HTML element the ID attribute, then we can reference it with the little hashtag and then the ID afterwards. And that'll reference that specific element instead of all of the elements. And you can also give HTML elements classes. And so how you would define it in the CSS file is with a dot and then the class name. So for example, the dot thick class changes the font weight to bold, which makes the text bold. And so as you can see, the paragraph element is including the class thick, and then the text becomes thick on the web page. And so why is it called cascading style sheets? Well, cascading means that all of the CSS rules that you define, color red, font weight bold, all of those, they're applied in the order that they're defined. So that means that the later rules take precedence. So as you can see in this example, if you first say that the color is red, but wait, no, the color is blue or green, which one of those is actually applied? Well, it's the latest one. So as you can see, the text is actually green because that was the latest one. So when would you use ID versus class? Good question. ID can only be applied to one specific element. So if you had two elements with the ID, like banana, then it would give you an error and it wouldn't work properly. So generally class is when you want to give the class to multiple elements, and ID is specifically for one element only. Yeah, and you can also give elements multiple classes if you need to as well. And that's just separated by spaces when you add the class attribute. Good question. And so CSS also uses what's called a box model. And the box model is what you see on the right here. Every element follows this kind of format, right? So first you have your content. That's what's within those opening and closing tags, right? The text you put in there, more elements that you put in there, whatever it is. And then within that, that element has a specific width and height. And then outside of that element, there's a padding, which is just spacing before the border. And so the border is usually just a line that surrounds the element. So this is super useful for different sorts of buttons and outlining things. And then finally, the margin is outside of the border and it separates this element from the next element. So how much space do you want between this one and the next one? So in this example here, we specify a rule for each div, which is just kind of a generic element, for its width to be 300 pixels, its border to be 25 pixels thick, and we want it to be solid, and we also want it to be green. So some CSS properties actually have multiple values that you specify. And so in that case, you would specify them in that order to have that happen. And then the padding outside of, right before that border, and then the margin outside. So in the example, you can see the border is the green, the content is inside, which is the white, and then that space between the dashed line is actually the margin. So if there are more elements, there would be that amount of space between each of those elements. And so positioning gets a little tricky sometimes. So let's take it a little slow. So pretty much every element that you're gonna make starts out with a relative position. So you can see in the left side here, div.relative class. This is a class that's specifically being applied to divs. So it's combining two CSS rules actually. So first we have div, which is our HTML element, and then dot class, which is our extra class. So it's just a slightly more specific selector just to make sure we don't apply this rule to the wrong element. And so when elements have position relative, they're arranged according to where other elements are on the page. So if you have one paragraph and then another paragraph, they're just gonna stack on top of each other. Or if you have headers, they'll stack. But you might want something different. Like what if you just want a word in the middle of the screen and it stays there no matter what? So that's where some other positioning types come in. So absolute or fixed positioning basically just fixes it to the screen, and its positioning won't be affected by any of the other elements on the screen. And so as you can see the HTML code in the middle, we have 3 elements there, 2 with the relative class and 1 with the fixed class. And so the 2 with the relative class, they're stacked on top of each other. I'm relative as first, I'm also relative as second. And then the fixed class, because we set its position explicitly, top 200 pixels, left 200 pixels. And what that actually means is that, so for fixed or absolute, you get access to these extra properties, which are top, left, bottom, right. And usually you specify 2 of them. And what it does is when you say top, how far do you want this element to display from the top of the page? Right, so in this example, I'm saying that I want this element to be 200 pixels down from the top and stay there. and then I also want it to be 200 pixels from the left, and that's where I want it to stay. So that's why it appears there in the box example in the middle. And so now we're going to get into sort of the live demo part of this with the personal website creations. So Ben, if you want to take it away.
Hello, everyone. So first, you're going to have to make an account with GitHub. So go to that link. If you don't have an account already, sign up for one. And you're going to have to download VS Code, which is our preferred text editor for the day. So let's, how about everyone react in the chat when you're done downloading? Yes, of course.
Yeah, so Visual Studio Code is a great code editor with integrations with Git and GitHub. So it makes it super easy to code stuff and then push it straight to GitHub and get your website all set up. So highly recommended tool.
Basically, it's just so you can access all the versions of your code, just in case you want to backtrack or you want to keep like collaborative work, so things don't get messed up. Not depicted on the slides is GitHub Desktop. So this will just basically be an application on your computer that's very similar to GitHub. And you'll have all your files locally. So locally means that the files will be on your computer. And remote means that it'll be on github.com. And we'll explain more later, but make sure you have 2 things downloaded and an account on GitHub. Yeah, so when you're done, just give a thumbs up or a clap. We'll start moving along with the tutorial at 8. Okay, they're coming along, but we'll do breakout rooms later. So if you need one-on-one help, we'll be there, but I'll move along with this tutorial. So this should be the screen that you have when you open GitHub after you have logged in. So to start the repository for your website, you're going to click New. And this is really important. You have to name it your username. So in this case, it's include Davis. And after that, you have to put GitHub and another .io. So if your username was, for example, Michelle, it'd be michelle.github.io. Anyone have any questions about that? So after you have that, make sure it's public. If it's private, it won't be able to be hosted. And then add a README. And then click Create Repository. And it should take you to an example like this. So I already made this ahead of time. It's called include-davis.github.io. And since you already downloaded GitHub Desktop, you just have to click Code, this green button right here, and open with GitHub Desktop. So once you click that, it'll open. This is the URL that you have, and then this is where the website will be stored. So I can choose wherever I want. For me, I have it in my documents folder. And cloning basically means you're taking that repository from GitHub, which is remote, and putting it onto your computer locally. So I click clone. And now on GitHub Desktop, I have all my files. Or no files, but I have that whole repository. After that, you want to start editing your code. So open in Visual Studio Code should be the first option on GitHub Desktop. Once you click that, it should open Visual Studio Code. And there you go. And all you have to do is what Ben just went over. So you have an index.html file. This is the basic structure of your web page.
One quick
And
thing.
you have,
could we go a little bit slower? There was a request in chat.
sorry, did not see the chat. Yes, I can slow down. If you want me to go over something again, I can. It does not have to be called index.html. Okay. And in addition to your HTML, you have your style sheet. So I'm going to call that style.css. Whatever you name it, remember it because you're going to have to link the documents later.
One more quick thing.
Yes.
Could you zoom in a little bit to VS Code?
Yes, of course.
Perfect. Thank you.
And does anyone remember what was in the index.html document? You have that. So if you remember, inside the head is all the data that you need for your web page. So right here, I have meta, and then I have the title of my web page. Let's call it Benjamin's personal website. And that's going to show as the title of your web page when you have your tab open. And then right here, I have a link to a custom font. We'll go over this later. But this is where you put in the title of your style sheet. So I called it style.css, and I'm going to put that as the href link. Body is where you put all the content of your web page. So I can put my first main header. Let's call that welcome to my website. And if you remember that as you go down the numbers, the headers get smaller. So I can put a subheader.
Hey, Ben, can we go back to the GitHub repository? Because we lost a lot of people over there. So let's just go back for a bit.
Yes. Okay. Is everyone here right now?
Yeah. So we've just created the repository. And then let's go from here.
So if you remember, you click on code, open with GitHub Desktop. And that should open the files in your computer. Okay. And then once you're in GitHub Desktop, there should be an option to say open in Visual Studio Code. It should be the first thing you see on your screen. Right now, I can't do that just because I have a file created already. Esther, do you already have it downloaded on your computer? Okay. So you can go into GitHub Desktop. So when you're on your website, copy this link. And you can clone that repository. And by that, I mean you copy this and you go into GitHub Desktop and you paste it into clone repository. Okay, since everyone is there, we'll open in Visual Studio Code. Right now, you may not have any files. You have this tiny little button right here, or you can just right-click, New File. And make sure you have .html at the end of it to signify an HTML file, and .css to signify a CSS file.
Do we want to do breakout rooms so that we can help people on a more individual basis with the setup, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page before we get into it?
Yes. Would that help everyone? Okay. Are you getting that set up in?
Yeah. So the plan for these breakout rooms for everyone is that we'll have people from HackDavis include in every room, or cycling rooms. And so we'll be there to help you out if you have any questions with the setup and everything. And we'll do that for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll come back into the main room. Let's see. All right, so I will open these now, and we'll be visiting all the breakout rooms to help you get set up, make sure we're all on the same page. And hit the Get Help button or the Ask for Assistance if there's no one in there and you need some help.
If anyone wants to see an example website, I may do some shameless promotion. But HackDavis recently revamped their website. So this is our website right now. If you want some inspiration, I think a common trend right now is like minimalism. So we have our name in the middle. And then if you scroll down, there's some information about our past projects. And then some testimonials. So you can do a lot with a website. You can literally put anything you want on there. And yeah. Look this up.
Can we access the web page now, or is?
Not yet. We'll be going over that when everyone is back. At the question about joining, so we just finished selecting applicants for this quarter, but we have applications every single quarter. So in the winter, you can keep a lookout for our applications. So if you want me to break down this web page right now, the background is simply an image that one of our designers created. I just put it as the background. It's like similar to changing your desktop background. This little piece of typing is JavaScript. And then all these are hyperlinks. So the include one is a home link button. About goes to our about section. And I can teach you how to do that later, but it's an href and it'll take you to one of your other HTML files. So basically, if you look, there's about, board members, projects, calendar, and contact. Those are all HTML files. At Warren, yes, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Hi, Benjamin. May I ask you where you find those like diagram like in the background? Like, do they have a like some website like contain most of the, I mean, many of the those charts or diagrams?
If there are any designers here, link your like favorite website for open source images. But I think if you look for free website designs, or actually free graphics, there are a lot of free sources out there. Yeah, right now I'm looking at FreePic. There's a lot of very aesthetic
Wow.
designs.
I'll make it in my bookmark.
Yeah, I think there are a lot more better ones, but as long as it's open and out there, you can use it. If you do take someone's stuff, make sure you credit them or reach out to them.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Ben, quick question.
Yes. What's up?
There's some DMs. Some people just got to the VS Code stage and they want to catch up to the code that we have written so far. Do you mind sharing your screen real quick?
Yes.
Awesome.
Can everyone see this?
Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Alrighty, breakout rooms are closing. So
Okay.
they should all be closed in like 30 seconds or so. And then we can get back into it. And then at the end, we will open up the breakout rooms again for anyone who wants to chat, hang out, or get some more help or assistance or have questions or anything. So the UTF-8 char set is a specific standard, as far as I remember, is a specific standard of the characters that you can use on your page. So generally, you won't really be messing with this, and this isn't really required. But in the case that you're using some foreign characters, such as like Chinese characters or other things like that, you might have to specify a different character set in order to like have everything display properly. Hong, if that answers your question. Okay, perfect. I think we can get started again.
Okay. So right now we won't have to put much information. We'll just want to test if this works. So on your left, go to the third button. This is basically version control. So whatever changes you made, you haven't saved them onto your account yet. So click on that. And it should show 2 files because you created 2 files. Okay. Click commit. So commit is basically clicking save when you're typing on Microsoft Word is comparable to that, but you're saving this version of your code. And that's this check mark right here. And it'll prompt you to type a message for the specific save. Any questions? So click the check mark and type your message for save. So I'm going to say added 2 files. And click enter. So you just saved that version of your code on your local computer. It's still not on your GitHub. No questions? Okay. So to put on your GitHub, you're going to click the 3 dots. Okay, when you click the check mark, that's commit. And it should pop up a text box right at the top. I already committed, so it won't pop up, but you just type a message for your commit. And I recommend you guys put like a very specific message so you don't get lost. So like just say, oh, I added 2 files or I put an index file. Just so you have keep like a record of everything. You don't see a check mark? It's right here.
On the
Top left-
sidebar?
Top
Which
left
one
corner.
did you? Sorry.
Oh,
Which
sorry.
button on the sidebar did you hit to get to that?
Oh, 1, 2, 3. It looks like 3 dots with like lines. It's very confusing. But it's the third button on the sidebar. I'll stay here for another 10 seconds. Yes, but it should already have come with Visual Studio Code.
Yeah, if it didn't, we can help you install it later once we go into breakout rooms again.
Yes. At Ronvik, not yet. Well, we will push it onto our GitHub account in a bit. Semi, yes, just click through it and see what it says and keep me updated. If anyone else is struggling, just send a message. But so far we have committed and saved our file. So the next step is to put that onto the remote repository. And by remote, I'm referring to the github.com repository. So click the 3 dots and you should see a menu. At Maya, so I should try to figure out. Yes, we can help you later. You'll get one-on-one help. Okay, so click the 3 dots and push. It's pretty self-explanatory. You're pushing onto another repository. Thank you, Ben. So I'm going to click push right now. And it's like a loading bar right here. Just wait for a few seconds. Yes, okay. It should be done. Is anyone struggling to find the push button?
You can also click the little spinny thing in the bottom left to push as well.
Yes, there's many shortcuts on Visual
There's so
Studio
many
Code.
shortcuts.
But for all of you, if you are struggling to find it, just look for the words push. Okay, I'm gonna move along. So now I'm gonna transfer over to our GitHub repository. So I'll refresh the page and voila, I should see the 2 files. With the 2 comments I made, I said added 2 files. Very convenient. Since there's no question, I'll wait a little bit, but because you pushed, you should be able to see your changes. It'll take a minute, but you can go to the URL of the repository, which is what you named it, your username.github.io, and it should show all the changes you just made. Let's try it out. There you go. It says welcome to my website and then some more information. And if you remember, this was a header, this is H2, and this is a paragraph. I got an error saying that Git failed. At Allison, you can open like incognito and try it. Sometimes it needs to clear the cache. Yeah. Yes, I can show my style.css. I'll show it on here. Okay. All I put was I want my main header to be red, and I put an ID in one of my elements. So I put ID bold, that's what I called it. So this H2 is going to be bold. And you can do a whole bunch of customization later on. You can just look it up online and it'll tell you what you can add to each CSS element. It still doesn't work. Okay, We can walk through that. So to double check that everything is hosted properly, go to settings on your repository. So you're looking at this screen, go to settings, and then scroll all the way down. It should have a little section about GitHub pages. And this is usually done automatically, but if it's not for some reason, just select the branch and then save. But you have to know what the branch is, so we can go back. The branch is said right here. You don't have to worry too much about it, but mine is called main. So just go to settings. And in this little section, select main, and it should update your website. Basically, you're saying that you want your web page to load from this branch of your repository. If there aren't any more questions, I can show. Oh, I'm struggling to push the files. Is it on Visual Studio Code that you're struggling with, Sammy? Okay, it's probably it has to do with your Git. We can help you later in a breakout room. Okay. So I'm going to show you guys how to add a custom font because we don't want it to look ugly like this. So my favorite place to find fonts is Google Fonts because it's free. So let's look for something aesthetic. Let's do Lego. So I want a thin one. I want a bold one. You just select the styles and you'll get this pop-up on the right. Any questions so far? Okay. Click embed. It should be the second tab. And you have some beautiful code to copy. No questions. So I'm going to copy that piece of code and then go back to my text editor, go to my index, and remember where we put our data. We put it in the head. So I'm going to paste it right before my style sheet so that my style sheet can recognize it. So I have that font now. I can use it wherever I want in my CSS. So let's change that right here. Font family. And don't worry about memorizing all of these. You can always look them up later. There's way too many to memorize. And since it's a custom font, remember to put it in quotations. And if for some reason that doesn't work, you can always put multiple options. So if Lato for some reason doesn't load, let's just put Arial. And that should be a default font, yeah. These are like backups chronologically. If this doesn't work, Helvetica will come in. If that doesn't work, sans serif. Yeah, if everyone has no questions, we can do breakout rooms, but feel free to add any custom elements to your webpage. We're not requiring you to do anything. Make it personal. Yes, I can. I know that if you have Adobe accounts, you can access their fonts for free as well, which is very nice.
All right, so you want to do breakout rooms?
Yes, let's do it.
All righty.